Hello, Dark Hero here. So, a lot has changed with the new free title update for Sunbreak. 4 new monsters, a new map, new crafting system and a new endgame system. That's a lot, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Even if you pay no attention to what's meta, most if not all your favorite weapons have gotten quite the power boosts through all of this new content, and some may even have new whole playstyles available to use and enjoy. 2 big highlights of this update are, for example, Golden Moon Braces, the Gold Rathian Vam Braces, and Silver Soul Mail, the Silver Rathlow's chest piece, with the latter including an entirely new skill that cannot be obtained through decorations or even Courier Crafting, Element Exploit. Not to mention all the other newly added skills like Adrenaline Rush or Sneak Attack that can provide considerable boosts of damage upon fulfilling their requirements, or quality of life skills like Spirit Bird Call or Defiance, or even skills that are insanely fun to use like Status Trigger. As such, I wanted to showcase 5 weapons that I believe to be some of the biggest winners after the update. The weapons that benefit the most from the new content and that you may not already be using because, you know, it's always fun to try new weapons in Monster Hunter. I never expected to like Greatsword as much as I do, but here we are and Greatsword is my second most used weapon in Sunbreak. With that being said, let's start with the weapon that I believe has been quite overlooked in Sunbreak, and that is Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield in base Rise was a lot more focused on doing raw damage. However, now in Sunbreak, and especially after the first free title update, gaining access to Element Exploit through the use of the Silver Rathlow's chest means that elemental weapons for the Sword and Shield are going to be much more viable. In addition to that, if you prefer the raw playstyle or you just don't like having different weapons for different elements, we now have Lunatic Rose, the Gold Rathian Sword and Shield, which was a staple if you remember back in Iceborne. It is pretty much the very best sword and shield that you can use in the entire game. It has quite simply fantastic stats, and is a weapon that is going to do well against pretty much every monster in the game. And if you feel like it, you can always try to use a status trigger and for a build with this weapon. However, it is a shame that the back hop of the Sword and Shield does not proc status trigger, so it isn't going to be very viable. The Lucen Argykuga chest piece also fits very well for the raw playstyle of the Sword and Shield, along with the raw build for many other different weapons, as it comes with critical boost level 1, agitator level 2, sneak attack level 1, along with a level 3 slot and a level 1 slot. And to top it all off, Sword and Shield is one of those weapons that you can always add more skills to the build and it's always going to be beneficial. Of course, you'll be looking for skills like Chain Crit, Agitator, Wirebug Whisperer, and so on, but other skills like Offensive Guard, for example, can be very good to greatly boost the damage of your Shoryugeki. There's also useful skills like Protective Polish, as Sword and Shield always burns through sharpness very quickly, or you can get Slugger to help with your KOs. If you've never played Sword and Shield before, now is the perfect time to do it. Next up we have the bow, one of the very strongest weapons in the entire game ever since base Rise. As a highly efficient elemental weapon, the bow stands out as a clear winner in this update. You can trigger Adrenaline Rush very easily with how mobile bow is, and of course Element Exploit is, quite simply, going to increase the damage of all your builds. I'm not sure if any of the new bows that were added with the free title update are any good. I imagine that the Silver Rathlow's one might be a good option for rapid bows, but I myself am not much of a bow user. I've just started using the weapon in Sunbreak, and I'm greatly enjoying how powerful and fun it is to use. One thing to note is that I do believe that Status Trigger and Foray are not good options for the bow. Perhaps with Poison it can work nicely, but I'm not sure about Blast. But that is something that bow mains will have to let me know in the comment section below. Of course, Courier Crafting can also greatly help bow users because you always need to spend a few points to add skills like bow charge plus and spread up, so the ability to gain additional skills like chain crit or even a decoration slot upgrade could greatly benefit your builds. And for very similar reasons as to why I recommend the bow, I have to also recommend one of the most underrated weapons in Sunbreak, the dual blades. Very rarely do I see people using the dual blades or even talking about them. They have been great since base Rise, and while they didn't get really amazing things in Sunbreak, I feel like dual blades are now the strongest they have ever been. Of course, as an elemental weapon, much like the bow, element exploit is going to work exponentially well for them. You also gain access to Adrenaline Rush, Status Trigger and Foray, all of which you can use and abuse in various different ways for many different builds. I've covered a lot of elemental builds for the dual blades, but also a poison build that uses Foray and Status Trigger, and the weapon just feels amazing to use. Especially since it is a weapon that is meant to be played up close to the monster and you have the ability to dash away from incoming attacks. It just fits so well with all of the additions we got here in Sunbreak, and even when it comes to weapons, the Silver Rathalos dual blades are actually quite good. I do believe the regular Rathalos dual blades are going to do better for you, but the Silver Rathalos dual blades aren't bad either. I've talked enough about the dual blades in other videos, so let's move on to the fourth weapon, which in this case it's actually two weapons, the switch axe and the charge blade. And I know what you may be thinking, 2 weapons in the number 4 slot, wasn't this supposed to be 5 weapons? Well, it is my list, I can do whatever I want, but seriously? Elemental File, Switch Axe and Charge Blade have clearly been extremely good in Sunbreak, and now they are even better. Additionally, there's the new Rapid Morph level 4 decoration, which instantly gives you 2 points of Rapid Morph, which you should be able to slot into your sets easily, given that the Silver Soul Mail chest piece comes with a level 4 slot. And even if you dislike playing Elemental Switch Axe or Charge Blade, this is a very good addition to all of your sets. And of course, Courier Crafting is going to help you in that regard, so you may not even need to spend decorations adding these skills, you may just get them from augmenting your armor sets. One also really cool thing about the Charge Blade in specific is that a lot of the Charge Blade armor pieces that you can use that come with Load Shell and Guard Up and Offensive Guard and other useful skills for the weapon, a lot of them are lower rarity armor pieces, which means that you can add even more and better skills through Courier Crafting, so you may even be able to make the perfect Charge Blade set without using what is considered some of the meta armor pieces, which I think is really cool. And finally, the last weapon I want to talk about here in the video is the gun lance. Now sadly, the gun lance didn't get any valuable gun lances, so you really only have the same 3 viable options: the Crunchy Corn Popper, the Pyre Ragnakadaki gun lance, or Roar of the Canine. Capcom and gun lances, am I right? They seem to always mess it up when it comes to balancing this weapon. But that being said, there is one particular skill that is very useful for the gun lance and can actually lead to a very fun playstyle, which is Sneak Attack. As it turns out, Sneak Attack does actually boost the shelling damage of the gun lance. That is unexpected because the description of the skill mentions attack power, which would normally not affect the shelling of the gun lance. But not only is the skill mistranslated, as Sneak Attack actually increases your attack by 20% at level 3 instead of the 12% that is displayed on the skill description, but quite simply Sneak Attack boosts your damage by 20% at level 3. You do need to hit the monster from the rear, however the game is very generous with how the angles of this work, and it seems like only the position of where you start the attack counts towards increasing the damage. So if you end up on the face of the monster after you perform the attack, that's no problem as you started the attack from behind the monster. I'm not too familiar with gun lance meta sets, it's a weapon that I need to learn a lot more about, As such, I'm not sure if this skill is going to be mandatory for gunless builds. However, if you see the opportunity to add this skill, I'm sure it's going to prove useful to you, and Courier Crafting can make this even easier for you, as you'll be able to max out skills like load shells a lot easier. That is, if you're lucky to get the augments. While maybe none of this sounds amazing or particularly interesting, but I find it hilarious that the skill Sneak Attack, you know, the skill that is meant to represent rogues and assassins, is best used by the loudest weapon in the game. I just love how ironic that is. There are many other weapons that I haven't mentioned that I'm certain are a great deal more powerful now than they were when Sunbreak first released. For example, a Veil Lance is a lot stronger now thanks to Adrenaline Rush. I'm sure Insect Glaive as an elemental weapon is doing better in this update, and maybe it can use Sneak Attack decently well with the aerial playstyle. Or that hammers probably benefit greatly from Element Exploit for Courage sets. Also, I'm not much of a Bogan hunter myself. I've never really studied them much beyond grasping the basics, but I can imagine that they're doing better now, even if they were pretty busted already. I just wanted to showcase these 5 or 6 weapons in this video because I especially appreciate how this update changed how many weapons can now be played. It's something that in my opinion was missing in base Rise, and now we have a lot more reasons to diversify our builds. I know not everyone likes Courier Crafting, which is understandable. It's totally reasonable for people to dislike such a heavy RNG system, but as different title updates roll out and we get better access to different decorations, and of course new armor pieces and weapons, we are all going to be so overpowered that we don't even need to look at meta sets to destroy whatever monster the game throws at you. With that being said, if you have enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Dark Hero, and as always, happy hunting.